Welcome to the third installment of Enemy Tech, where I take all the decks that I played against and I analyze them based on the cards that we saw. Now, fortunately, I did manage to cast Lost Legacy in the second and third matches, so I do have a more or less complete version of those decks, but unfortunately I don't have that for the first one. So first up here we've got the Rakdos aggro deck, although it's kind of remiss to call this a Rakdos deck. He did have black mana sources, but he doesn't have any actual black. At least we didn't see any black cards. So let's get into the cards that we saw. First, the mana base. We have 2 Foreboding Ruins, 1 Swamp, 2 Mountains, and 1 Ether Hub. He probably runs a full play set of these non-basic lands. But this is all that I know for sure is in the deck. We saw Village Messenger, we saw Laughing Hellion, we saw Avengers of Pronouncements, we saw Scrapheap Scrounger, which is a card that does use black. We were fortunate enough to see all 4 Incendiary Flows in one match. That was pretty brutal. And we saw 1 Smuggler's Copter. This is your pretty basic aggro package for red right here. Well, right here is your pretty basic aggro package for red. Scrapheap Scrounger is a nice little addition to the aggro package. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got Unlicensed Disintegration, especially since he seems to care about artifacts. But this is pretty much all we saw, which is probably why we won, because we didn't see a whole lot of glamour out of the black side of this deck, which is the only reason to have these things in there. We did see a Structural Distortion out of the sideboard. Exile target artifact or land. Structural Distortion deals 2 damage to that permanent controller. I never saw this before Kaladesh, but I can kind of see why it's in now that Kaladesh brings in a lot of artifacts. I'm pretty sure this is a sideboard card, and I'm pretty sure that he brought this in specifically to take out my Westfell Abbey. Next up, we've got Izzet Tower. Like I said, I managed to cast a Lost Legacy on him, so we got to see the whole deck. First, the lands. We've got 4 Ether Hubs, 4 Spirebluff Canals, 4 Wandering Fumaroles. How many is this? So, oh yeah, 7 Islands and 7 Mountains. Pretty basic package for a 2-color deck. This is more or less what you want to see from an enemy color deck. Pretty much every enemy color deck would go around here. Total of 25 lands, which seems to be about normal for the current standard, at least as far as controller decks go. First up, we'll talk about the burn package here. 4 Galvantic Bombardments, 4 Harnessed Lightnings, 2 Brutal Expulsions, which is a card I have never seen in Standard. I guess because blue-red isn't really a thing, but even in the blue-red prowess and Fevered Visions decks, I haven't seen Brutal Expulsions. This really hurt us. 4 Dynavolt Towers, which is an amazing card for burn. 2 Radiant Flames, and we saw 3 Reaver Lightnings in the deck. Now I did this a little bit reversed. This is the deck that we saw post-sideboard. Pre-sideboard we saw Incendiary Flow, but it looks like he took that out. What he took it out for, I'm not entirely sure. Although I have a hunch that these Weaver of Lightnings were brought in to from the sideboard. Weaver of Lightning isn't a card that is universally good in Standard, but there are a lot of decks, including ours, that it is really good against. We only saw, he's actually running very few counter spells, although that is backed up by the Torrential Gearhulk. 1 Void Shatter, 2 Negates, 1 Ceremonious Rejection. It's possible that he sideboarded some of the counter spells out, but it's hard to say. 3 Glimmer Geniuses, the best draw in the game, like just hands down the best draw. Well, sorry, not in the game, but in Standard. 4 Anticipates, 2 Torrential Gearhulks, which were thorn in my side like every match that we played, except maybe the one that I won. 2 Things in the Ice. This looks like a really solid deck, or this is a really solid deck. I mean, it beat ours. People were hoping that, people were really looking forward to Izzet becoming a thing, and yeah, it's definitely a thing, current Standard. Alright, next up we've got a deck called Deep Blue, because I couldn't think of a better name for it. Now I do want to apologize a little bit for, I technically misled people because I used I used the art for Glimmer of Genius for the logo for this deck. I basically made all that up before I actually wrote down their deck lists. And I basically just said, okay, what card do I remember from this deck that kind of epitomizes what the deck does? And Glimmer of Genius is just the best draw spell in blue right now. So I just assumed that it was in the deck. And I remember seeing it during our matches, but it was in the Izzet deck that I saw it. So this deck actually doesn't run Glimmer of Genius, which I think is a mistake, but we'll get to that when I go through the cards. So first up, we saw 3 copies of Negate, 2 copies of Scatter to the Winds, 2 copies of Revolutionary Rebuff, more counter spells than the Izzet deck, but I mean, mono blue, what's mono blue going to do? It's going to counter things. 2 Select for Inspections, 3 Engulfs the Shores, Jason Raveler's Secrets, 3 Grips of the Royal. This is basically our bounce package. I wouldn't be surprised if Grip of the Royal came in from the sideboard. Like I said, we used Lost Legacy second game, so we don't know what the deck looked like before sideboarding. We didn't see any cards that we saw the first game that we didn't see in the deck in the second game, so this could be just all there was. But Grip of the Royal seems like it's good against our deck, and it may have been brought in from the sideboard, or he just runs it in general because most decks have creatures, and it cantrips. So 3 pieces of the puzzle: 1 Scour the Laboratory and 3 Anticipates. I think Scour the Laboratory is a mistake here. It's either going to be a late game draw, or it's going to be. I mean, I guess if you got a lot of instances of sorceries, it's okay. I don't know. I just think Glimmer Genius is better because Glimmer Genius, you can effectively, select from 4 cards, because if the first 2 cards are cards that you don't want, you can put them on the bottom, and then you get 2 cards. So you can basically advance your deck 4, whereas this, you draw 3 and you get what you get. Even if you're not using the energy, I would run Select for Inspection instead of this, or not Select for Inspection. Glimmer of Genius. I'd run Glimmer of Genius instead of this. So we've got 4 Part the Watervilles, which is probably his major win condition, which you didn't see. At one point he cast a piece of the puzzle, and I was like, he's fishing for something. What is he fishing for? And it was probably Part the Waterveil. And I should have guessed that, to be honest. I should have assumed that Mono Blue would be running Part the Waterveil. But I didn't see it, and I wasn't sure, so I named this card instead, which we did see in the first game, Metallurgic Summonings. There was one game that I did in practice for the Fat Pack deck, where I actually ran up against a deck that was using both of these 2 cards. Wasn't quite the same, I don't think. But with when you have Metallurgic Summonings out, and you cast Part the Waterveil, you get 2 6/6 creatures. One's the land. One's the land from Part the Waterveil, and 1 for Metallurgic Summonings, because Part the Waterveil has 6 CMC. Even if you awaken it, it's still only 6 CMC. So you get 2 6/6 and an extra turn, and that's pretty bad. That's pretty oppressive when you get that out. This type of deck dominated our Fat Pack because we didn't have any way of dealing with creatures, and then you get a lot of little like 2 and 3 creatures pretty much every time you cast anything. So it's actually a pretty good card. People were kind of scoffing when they saw it, but yeah, if you don't have any way of dealing with it, that's a challenge. 3 things in the ice, pretty common. I think every blue control deck, yeah, pretty much every blue control deck these days is running Thing in the Ice. It's funny because Thing in the Ice wasn't a thing in Shadows over Innistrad. It kind of started becoming a thing in Eldritch Moon, but now you're definitely seeing it a lot. I'm almost kind of glad they changed the rotation rules, because otherwise Grasp of Darkness would be rotating out with Amonkhet, but now Grasp of Darkness gets to stay in during Amonkhet block. And then we saw that there was 1 Rise of the Tide in the deck. Now he didn't actually get to cast this, but we saw it when we got to look through his deck. This is actually, you know, if you've got a lot of instants and sorceries, this could actually potentially be a game-winning thing. It feels a little out of place in this deck. It just, I don't know. And then we saw 25 islands. That's huge. Not really any other lands you want in this deck. If you're trying to fetch, like he's got a lot of fetch and filtering here. I would probably put in Rear Reach Sanitarium, but that's about it. You don't really want to loot this too much. You could put in Ether Hub. If you put in Glimmer of Genius, you could put in Ether Hubs and something that uses energy for some way. Even Dynavolt Tower, honestly. Oh my gosh, Dynavolt Tower actually would be very good in this deck. It would give you a way to burn creatures, even if you're not running any red. You can burn creatures with all of your instants and sorceries. Then Glimmer of Genius, and of course if you're going to do that, you might as well run Harness Lightning. And then you might as well be playing the Izzet deck. Because Harness Lightning is a really good way of getting rid of Copper. But that's it for Enemy Tech number 3. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on brewing.